Welcome to your daily dose of nature with Natural Habitat Adventures. Our topic today, 40 Tons of Delight, Part 2, Gray Whales Go to Mexico, presented by Annie Van Dinther. Annie is our Guide Development Director and Exploration Leader worldwide, and we have Sofia Merino with us, and she is coming to us live from La Paz in Baja, Mexico. And she is our exploration leader down there. So Annie and Sophie, over to you.
Thanks so much, Lee. And hello to everyone. We're so excited that you're tuning in again to learn about these incredible animals. Obviously, we love to learn about them and see pictures of them and whatnot. We're going to talk today about why the gray whales go to Mexico. I'm coming to you from Homer, Alaska, and this is where they spend some time, but they also spend time in Mexico. So why do they do that? We're going to understand things about birthing and calving. We're also going to learn the story of one extraordinarily incredible female gray whale and a little bit about her story, as well as look into the different lagoons that the whales go to. We are going to talk a little bit about mating. And so this is the disclaimer that if that conversation is too much for any of our viewers, we want to give the little warning for that now. And you'll know exactly when that section of the webinar is coming. Don't worry, it's not too over the top, but just to be full disclosure. So let's get on with it then. First, we start out in Alaska. This is where the whales are traveling to right now, and they're going to spend their summer months in Alaska feeding and filling up, and that's what we're going to be talking about in our next webinar, the third of this series. But for today, we're going to follow these whales south along the coast of the United States, and you can see here that they travel all the way along the coast, and they travel very close to the coast. They do that because that way they can avoid predators. If they were to stay out in the open waters like other whales do, it would be really dangerous for them. So they've adapted and come up with this special way of kind of staying literally under the radar. You can see there near the sort of L of California, that's where Monterey Bay is. This is an area where you can actually see a little canyon. That canyon could almost be called Orca Canyon from the gray whale perspective. And especially there, the whales are going to go super close to shore to avoid any predators. All along this coast, from Alaska down to Mexico, there's over 22 different research stations that are set up so that they can spot the whales as they travel. Now, there are not very many species of whales that you could do that with, because normally you're going to have to go get out in a boat and see them in that way. Those stations are going through a tough time right now. Just like all of us have to stay home and quarantine, so do the researchers that are normally counting the whales as they go up to Alaska. It's the first time in 37 years that that research is stopping. So that's going to be a gap in our data because of what we're all experiencing. Now, after the whales travel south, they are going to continue on and make their way to Baja. This is about 760-mile peninsula that is just south of the state of California, and it's separated from the mainland by the Sea of Cortez. Now, they don't just go anywhere in Baja. They have three favorite places that they really love to spend their time. The first is Hoja de Libra. That's the one that you can see farther north, really, really far north there. And then you can see in the middle, there's San Ignacio Lagoon. That is one of the places that we go when we go to watch these amazing animals. And then the farthest south is Magdalena Bay, another place that we go to see these whales when we're going on the charter boat. So this is the area where they go to, and no one is better prepared than Sofia here to tell us about this, because she's literally in Baja as we speak. So she's going to share some of these details.
Thank you, Annie. So yes, a lot of times the first question that I get is, what are the whales doing in Mexico? Why are they there, right? First answer for that is mating. They are here to mate, and I think it's going to be way better to first put a video that right now Lee is going to go for that, and you're going to see the whales mating, okay? And after this, we're going to, of course, explain more and go really deep into this. So please, Lee, if you could share the video with the rest of us. Perfect. Thank you, Ashley, for showing the video. So yes, we just saw this really fantastic footage of what actually happens. It's really clear in that way. But we want to discuss a little bit more about this. And what really happens while these whales are going into the mating process is that they are actually really promiscuous whales. So this means that actually males and female are going to mate not just with just one other whale. They're going to do it several times with several different whales. What is important for them at the very end of it is that they are pregnant, okay? As the video shows, that video was taken in California. So the mating also happens in the migration route, not only here in Mexico. And the reason for that is that the females are going to go into really specific estrus. This is the moment when they're receptive. And this only happens for 3 weeks. It's just 3 weeks. And between November and December, this is going to happen. And this time of the year, of course, they are coming down. If they don't get pregnant, then they can do it 40 days later again. And this is when they are in Mexico. So that's why we can see mating alongside the migration route, but also down here in Mexico. We have actually a really specific theory of why this happens. And I think I found it really interesting that when they are coming down, as Annie mentioned, they are following quite a narrow pathway, really close to the shore. So we have a greater concentration of whales in this specific part, right? So when they find each other in this part, they're going to be more close to each other, and it's easier to find other whales to mate. And this is also going to ensure a genetic mixing. Why? Because many whales coming from different parts are going to come together to this specific area. If they wait until they reach Baja, and we're going to find that a little bit later, some whales prefer to go to these particular lagoons. So maybe they're going to miss that genetic mixing. That's why it's so important for them to mate also alongside the migration route. But here in Baja, some of the displays that we see of mating, not only like the video that you saw, we also see breaching. Breaching is a display, especially males are the ones that are going to do that. A lot of guests most of the time tell us that I thought that the humpback whales were just the only ones that breach. And not really, the gray whales also do that. And we can see it that almost every day that we go out, we're very lucky to see it. And what we've seen is that sometimes the lagoon is completely relaxed, is everything, like nothing much is happening, we could say, and suddenly we see a breach, right? After that breach, a bunch of different whales are going to be together with a lot of action, with some mating. So that's why we kind of know that the breaching, it is also part of this mating displays that they show down here in Baja. This is a nice drawing of one of the really amazing books written by Dr. Schwartz. And for many, many years, we believe, like in the video we saw, that mating happened with a group of 3 whales, 2 males and 1 female. And that somehow this female whale was always just with 2 males. But that's not the case. That's something that Dr. Stephen Schwartz always told us, that it could be more whales, it could be less whales. We've seen also just a pair of whales mating, or 4 or 5 trying to mate also. So it's not really like it needs to be like these 3 whales, right? We tend to generalize a lot in science, but that's not the case. We have many different cases or options in that way.
Okay, so the birthing and calving that happens in Mexico is very interesting. These whales will go down to several of the different lagoons. If they're unlucky, they will have their babies along the way. And that is not really very safe at all. The likelihood of those young ones surviving is going to be pretty slim. So they make their ways to the lagoons. Once they're there, they have a 12 to 13 month gestation after the mating that Sofia was talking about. And by having their young in the mother's womb for so long, a couple things happen. One, she's trying to grow a 15-foot whale. So that does take a minute. And 2, she's going to ensure that she's going to be back in the lagoon by the time that it's time to give birth. So that extra long gestation is very helpful. When we look at this mean calving date, what that means is that usually it's somewhere around January 10 that the moms are going to give birth. But again, it's not going to be like all the whales one day are giving birth. There isn't a dormitory effect as far as we know when it comes to these gray whales, but roughly speaking, it's around January 10. The calves will stay with their moms for 6 to 7 months before they're weaned and independent on the summer grounds. This means that they will get to practice going back up north, and they will get some time feeding with mom in order to ensure that they know what to do when it really comes time. We're going to look now at some pictures of, this is a female whale. On the top part, you see her pregnant, and you can see how wide she is. You can literally watch her shape change with giving birth and taking care of a calf. I can say I've experienced that myself. So we have this mom here. In the middle picture, we have a new calf, okay? And you can see that she's definitely lost weight, but not that much. But now look at the third picture. The calf is about a month old here, and literally that weight has transferred from mom to the calf. It's an absolutely incredible bit of research that we're now able to see because of drones. So typically we aren't really big fans of drones near wildlife. However, when used properly, they are able to gather research that we previously could not gather. So they can literally go above the whale and the calf. When the whale spouts, they're able to gather genetic information about that whale. And then they can also take incredibly precise measurements of how wide mom is and how wide the calf is, giving us the growth rate for the whale. So it's a very cool form of research. Now we're going to go back to Sofia to talk a little bit about what the year is like for these whales.
Thank you, Annie. So if we take a good close into a 2-year cycle, we're going to start down here in winter of 2020. Let's say, for example, that this winter I was out there and I saw mating, right? So that's why they are here. We assume, of course, that the female now is going to be pregnant, right? And around late February and March, the females that are pregnant are the first ones to actually leave the lagoons. They're going to start migrating back to their summer feeding grounds. Why they are the first ones? Because they just want to make it there in time to eat as much as they can, because they need to sustain themselves, but also now they need to sustain the calf that is growing. So that's why they are the first ones to trigger the migration from Mexico to their summer feeding grounds, right? They are spending their time over there, eating as much as they can, and then at the end of their summer, right, and the beginning of fall, going to start coming down. So they reach winter again. So they reach winter again around December. So here, the winter of 2012, remember that Annie mentioned that the gestation period is between 12 to 13 months. So after 1 year, they are back here in Mexico to give birth, right? So that's why here in Mexico, we say that they are Mexican whales, because a lot of them are born in Mexican waters, outside of the lagoons or inside of the lagoons. So after they are born, they're going to spend mom and calf together an average of 1 month to 2 months inside of the lagoons. Of course, they're going to be nursing. And then between March and April, they're going to start the migration back to their summer feeding grounds. They're going to do this together, right? And that's why you see them alongside the US coast, moms and calves going north. Eventually, when they reach their feeding grounds, they're going to separate. Calf now is independent, and mom needs, of course, to rest a little bit. So her resting period is going to start, and also she's going to continue feeding because she needs to gain back the weight that she lost by the whole migration and by literally passing her energy to the calf. After mom rests, she needs to be ready again to do the migration back to winter, and the whole cycle starts again. So if we have good summer feeding conditions, that means that there's enough food for everyone. Every 2 years, approximately, is around 2.3 years, a female is going to have a calf. Okay, so then what happens when the moment comes to give birth? This is one of the most special moments, of course, of I think any animal in this world. And what the gray whales do is that the moms are going to isolate themselves in a really specific part of the lagoon that I'm going to show a little bit later. And when the moment comes, they're going to be really active. They're going to move a lot of their tail. They're going to be rolling. And eventually, when the time comes to expel the calf, this is something that we know because only 3 times we've been able to witness it by researchers. And what mom is going to do is bring the belly up to the surface, the lower abdomen area, as you can see in the draw over there. And the head is coming first. There is a little bit of discussion about this specific topic because by the whaling data that we collected many years ago, the descriptions were that when the calf was coming down the birth canal, they could see that the tail was first. But what researchers have been seeing is the opposite, is that right head is first. So it's tail or head. We don't really know it now. We can just tell us what researchers have been seeing. What they believe it could be that when the time comes for the mom to expel the calf, the baby turns or flips over. That could be another option, is that some are born head first, some are born tails first. But I think we would need to search a little bit more to get a final answer in this specific topic. But anyway, right after the calf is being born, something really amazing happens. The female, that is the one you see on the left part of the screen, is going to push the baby up. The calf is the one on the right. And why? If you could imagine a giraffe, right? That the giraffe comes out and mom goes close and is trying to stand to help the giraffe stand. It's kind of the same thing. The mom whale is going to go underneath the calf to push it to the surface. So she's making sure that the calf can breathe. In humans, we kind of do the same thing, right? It's like, is the baby breathing? So the whales do the same thing in this way. And as I mentioned before, they're going to isolate themselves in a really specific area. Here is a map of San Ignacio Lagoon, the middle of these 3 lagoons that we have in Baja. This part, the north end and the upper part of the lagoon, is where moms and calves are going. Especially when that moment of giving birth, mom is going to choose these really calm and shallow waters. By shallow, I mean between 4 meters, so that is going to be around 12 feet. So it's really, really shallow. There's not that much currents or anything like that. So it's a perfect place for them to give birth. After the season is passing by, moms and calves tend to go a little bit more south to the middle part of the lagoon. This is the area where the ecotourism camps are located. And eventually they're going to reach the lower part of the lagoon also, where we have more currents because it's connected to the Pacific Ocean. So here, actually, in the lower part is where the whale watching area is in San Ignacio Lagoon. Why here and not the rest of the lagoon? Well, I just mentioned, because this area is super protected for them, for the moms and calves. So we're not really missing that much when we go there, because here in the lower part is where we see a lot of the singles interacting, the mating behaviors, the breachings, and eventually moms and calves when they visit this part of the lagoon also. So a lot of times people ask us, how do you know it's a calf? When we're out there, we see a whale and, oh, that's a calf. Well, the first thing is because they're tiny. When the calf is born, they're going to be quite short, between 4 to 5 meters, so around 12 feet again. But they're going to be quite heavy, around 1 ton. But the thing is that this calf that we're seeing in this picture is actually a little bit bigger than this. How do we know that? Well, because after years and years and years of going out almost every day, you get used to seeing the differences in size of this calf. And this one is almost half of the size of Tom. So it is quite bigger. But when the calf is born, and this is some clues for us to know that they are just tiny, the calf is super wobbly. Their fluke is not completely rigid. You can see it like moving a little bit. They swim like worms. They don't know, they haven't discovered that thing of swimming yet. So that's why, as I was mentioning, mom goes underneath and helps them. But also, they haven't been using their fluke that much. So that's why it is like that. The sad thing is that in the first days of the calf's life is the most difficult ones, and many of them are going to die. This is a natural thing that happens. In the season in San Ignacio, it's common for us to see between 2 to 4 different strandings of dead calves, but this is a regular thing that we see. And then also what is going to happen in this time when they are tiny is that, remember that we mentioned about the barnacles and the lines that they have. These things are called siamids. So the picture that you see here first, the one on the left, those are the barnacles. So the calves are born without barnacles. They are super clean. But in the first couple of weeks, the larvae of the barnacle, the larvae stage of the barnacle, is going to set in the surface of the skin, is going to get fixated, and it's going to start growing. And then also the siamids, or the whale lice, the ones you see on the right, are going to pass from mom to the calf. So when we go out there and we see a calf already with some tiny barnacles and whale lice, then we know that it's going to be a couple of weeks. It's not a newborn. This is a baby whale in San Ignacio Lagoon. The rostrum is super short, is really tiny. It's a big difference between adults and baby whales. The rostrum of the adult is quite large, and the rostrum of the whale, as you can see, of the baby, is really clean, no barnacles, no lice. So this is another clue for us to know that this is a brand new baby. And a lot of times we also get this question asked a lot, how do they nurse? Because we do see also this nursing behavior in the lagoons, and we let everyone know that that's going on. This set of pictures were taken from a video that these are humpback whales. These are not gray whales, but we assume that the same thing happens. And in the first picture here to the left, we see down here, this is the the dorsal part of the calf, and right here is the belly or the abdomen of the mom. Okay, so the calf is approaching the lower part of the abdomen of mom, and he's getting close to this area. This area right here is where they have the mammary glands. They don't have such a thing as a nipple, if we think about in humans, and also the calf doesn't have lips, right? So how do they do this? So what's going to happen in this next picture, we kind of see it. The calf approaches, gets closer to the mammary slits, and they have one on each side, and the calf is turning a little bit, stimulating that area. As soon as he stimulates, the calf opens the mouth, and the milk just goes directly to their mouth. And then here in this lower picture, we see like a cloudy area. That is actually some milk of mom. It's really important for you to know that around 47% of the milk's mom is actually made of fat. So it's a little bit denser than water, and that's why we can see it, and it doesn't dissolve that fast. And Annie's going to mention a little bit more about this behavior.
So we often will have people ask, like, well, what does that look like? You know, we watch and study animals that are only a very short period of the time actually on the surface. So underwater, this is what it looks like. If you're in a boat, you can often tell that a mom and calf is in fact nursing, and that's because they will get into a rhythm where the calf will come up on one side and then go down for a few minutes, and then the calf will come up on the other side. Then the calf will go down for a few minutes and come up on the other side. And this might happen 3-4 times, and you can start to see a rhythm to what they're doing. And this is how we know that they're most likely at that time actually nursing. It's pretty cool to witness in nature.
Thank you, Annie. So, of course, with all of this nursing, there's going to be a huge change of weight for mom and for calf also. We now know with a lot of this new research that is going on that sees energy transfer from females to calves with the drones, a little bit of what Annie explained, that when the calves are almost ready to depart, this is going to be again around the very end of March or April down here in Mexico, they have already doubled their size and at least tripled their weight. So imagine how much that is to, in between 1 month to 2 months, double your size and triple your weight. So they are just eating like crazy, right? And also, we know by some of the numbers that when the calves reach the California moment in that part, they are nursing, but now they are feeding a little bit also. Dr. Schwartz called that like snacking, right? So they are having a little bit of a mix, and they can gain up to 20 kilograms, around 44 pounds in one single day. So this calf is just growing and growing, because eventually when they reach their feeding grounds, it needs to be the right size. These numbers are just totally crazy in that way. And to go a little bit beyond these numbers, imagine that you are a female, that you left your feeding grounds and you're not going to eat again until you come back to your feeding grounds. So when they spend their overwintering moments here in Mexico, the females are not eating. They are doing the migration, they are giving birth, they are feeding their calf, and they are not eating. So the females are going to lose up to 11,000 kilograms. This is so much weight since they left the previous autumn. We were kind of doing the numbers of this, and it's more than 5 regular cars of weight. So for me, that adds a little bit more to why the females are so important in this, to see them fit and right in San Ignacio Lagoon. I'm always amazed when we see them, because a lot of things happen into their lives, and they are just tough. They are just tough ladies. But anyway, we wanted to tell you the story of a female because they are just great. And to tell you the story of a female, we just have to talk a little bit about the photo IDing, because that's how we can tell the story, actually. These two pictures that you're seeing in this moment are from the same whale, but taken in different seasons. They might look a little bit different. The angle is different, the color is a bit different, but of course the weather conditions when you go out are never the same. So you're never going to have exact same picture of a whale. I'm going to point out here, in case that you're doubting, like, Sofia, you're crazy, this is not the same whale. These spots that you see right here are the same ones that you see down here also. And then let's take a look at these faded 1, 2, 3 spots, 1, 2, 3 spots. So with the trained eye, it's easier for us to then kind of recognize some whales that come back to the same lagoon year after year. So by photo ID in these whales, year after year, season after season, we can build a story. And in 2016, Dr. Sergio Martinez down here in Mexico did an amazing PhD, and he wanted to know more about these whales over the years. And what he realized, this is just one example of this amazing female, that it was seen the first time in 1977. This is when Dr. Steven Schwartz came for the first time to San Ignacio Lagoon. And then this whale was seen in 2016 also. So from all of these years, we saw it on the 78, 79, 80, and all of those years. The first time, it was a mom and it had a calf. And then in 78, we saw it as a single, and then again with a calf, and then again as a single. The cycle that we explained goes by. If we do the math between the 2016 and 1977, we're going to have 39 years. So this, we could say, it's at least 39 years. Well, the thing is that we need to add the 6 or 8 years that is, what it takes them to reach sexual maturity. So if we add these 6 or 8 years, then we have this number right here. So we now could say that this particular female in 2006 was between 44 to 47 years old. Why we cannot say a specific age? Because we don't know when it was born. But we can at least say an average, right, of those years. So that's why for the researchers, taking a photograph is so important, because it lets you like you can know the whole story of a whale with just a picture. And that is why it's also really important to support this type of research. That's something that Nat Hab does with this project in San Ignacio, and we're really proud of that. Just another quick small story about another whale that was seen actually last year is this female that the first time they saw it was again in 1977. And it was a mom that had a calf, and then it was seen again in 2019. So it was around 42 years old, this whale again. So again, it's just another example of how we can put together this whole story about the gray whales. With these studies, with recent studies of this long-term research, we can now also know that the solitary whales, these could be females, these could be males that are single, they're going to stay just a couple of days in the lagoons. The average is going to be around 8 days. Why just 8 days? The thing is that they mingle and they go from place to place. It's like bar hopping at 11 p.m. for humans in that way, that the singles, as I mentioned before, they just want to mate. And the males, they just want to pass their genes, and the females, they just want to get pregnant. So they're going to visit as many lagoons as they can, as many whales as they can, to be able to do that. So that's why they just stay a couple of days in one lagoon. For moms and calves, it's totally different. The average stay for them is going to be around 32 days with a maximum of 90 days. So this is going to be between 1 to 2 months, even sometimes even a little bit more. Why? Well, we mentioned that the moms come and they have their babies inside of the lagoon, sometimes out, but they go into these protected areas to basically teach them how to be a whale. Because eventually, when they need to make migration back outside of the lagoons, they're going to have predators, they're going to have the ocean conditions that is going to be way difficult. So they need to be ready for this. That's why the lagoons here in Mexico are protected now. They are sanctuaries. They are such an important part of their lives for them to be able to do the migration successfully back to their feeding grounds. And another thing that it was really important for us to let you know is that, yes, they also move some of them between lagoons. There was also research done here in Mexico, really interesting, that we're trying to find how likely is it to find a whale from San Ignacio in Magdalena Bay, for example, or from Magdalena Bay in Ojo de Liebre Lagoon. What the researchers find out is that it is 6 more times likely to find a whale from San Ignacio in Magdalena Bay, or the opposite. And why were they thinking that? It was actually making sense, because when they are coming down, a lot of whales are going to stop, of course, in Ojo de Liebre. They're going to, this is the largest lagoon, actually, the largest complex, so they're going to stop there. But a lot of them are going to San Ignacio, especially the ones that are going to Magdalena Bay. They're going to stop first in San Ignacio. And they confirmed that also with Fulbright Dean. Some of the same whales that they've seen in Magdalena Bay, they've seen them in San Ignacio. And the opposite thing happens. The gray whales, they tend to come to Magdalena Bay when they are ready to depart, when ready to go north. They're going to do, a last quick stop here in San Ignacio Lagoon before they continue their journey north. So there is some connectivity between these lagoons. So now we wanted to share, we've been talking a lot, of course, and especially about the calves and about these amazing encounters that we have. Remember that we talked in the previous one about Pachico and about these friendly whales. So now he's going to share an amazing video of Dr. Stephen Schwartz with a friendly whale.
Yes. I got soaked yesterday. I remember that. Hola, mamá. Bien, bien, mamá. Arriba, por favor. Hola, mamá.
Del otro lado. Del otro lado, Eder.
Las dos. Mano, mano. Las dos. Mano, mano. Get that picture.
Tengo un video que le voy a cambiar por una langosta. Ah.
¿Está abierto? No. There's a baby half open. Oh, they went past. Okay. Adios.
Okay, that was incredible to see that video and to see those whales close up, especially with Stephen Schwartz, who of course has done so much for these animals. And I think it was so good that my kitty cat even decided to join us here today. She was wanting to check out what was going on that video. So I think, Lee, we're ready to open it up to questions.
Okay, good. Well, our number one question today has been about whether gray whales have any natural enemies or predators.
They do, and that is one of the reasons that they are going so close to shore, because they want to avoid those predators. And the main predator is the orca. That is number one, other than humans. They are still hunted in some areas, but orca would be their primary concern.
And something just a little bit to add that is really important is that the orcas don't go inside of the lagoons. So that's why one of the theories why we believe the gray whales go there to have their calves, because they don't have predators inside there.
Yeah. Okay, good. This is a neat question too. Will a mother whale recognize and welcome her offspring years after she's given birth?
That is an excellent question. We don't have a lot of research on that. One of the biggest reasons is that we're just now starting to learn the mom-calf pairs because of the research that I mentioned. I can tell you a story about humpbacks. When I was working with humpback whales off the east coast of the United States, there was a pretty famous story of a whale who, she was a really good mom. Her calf got entangled in a net. So right, that famous kind of hump that you see on the humpback, it's actually a great spot for nets to get caught. And the whale was injured. And as the net stayed on, there was a pretty hefty wound. Now, this whale had separated the mom and calf just as they normally would right before the feeding season in the summer. They were apart for about 6 to 8 weeks, but when the young one got injured, they came back together again and they stayed together for a whole additional year. So that was a pretty great look at a whale that certainly knew its calf, and not only knew its calf, but knew that its calf was injured and needed an additional year of mom's protection and help to get back on its flukes, if you will. So that's the experience that I have with that. I have not seen research about like years later. However, they are incredibly vocal. So I do think that there would be, you know, the potential of communication that way. What are your thoughts, Sofia?
So far of what I've known here in Mexico, that we've never seen kind of a behavior like that, where you kind of guess that they recognize. Is really difficult to study whales in general. So to try to find a way to study that is actually quite hard. For now, with the research that we've been done here, we can follow the story of calves, right, and of adults. And when the calf is eventually an adult, so far we haven't seen, for example, moments when this calf that we know it is spending way more time with a particular whale that it is his or her mom. Maybe we have to wait a couple of years and see if that type of research can be done.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is the typical lifespan of a gray whale?
That's a great question. The books and the scientific papers always mention that it's going to be around 80 years, and that is an average. We kind of don't know for sure if that is going to be the case or not. This is information that came also from the hunting era. But something really interesting now, that as we're learning with these new studies, as we're following the story of each whale season after season, is that maybe for now Dr. Steven Schwartz, but for the younger and younger researchers, it's a question that we might have the answer in the future, like how long it, because their study, if you think about it, now we just know an average 30 to 40 years of a whale life, because that's how long we've been studying them. So as the studies grow older, I think we're going to have more information about that. But in average, the books always mention around 80 years.
Okay, thank you. And have another numbers question for you. What is the average number of whales that visit San Ignacio each year, and has that changed with climate change?
That is a fantastic question. So the average number, it changes, because actually what we've been seeing these past seasons. So in the past, the number was going to be between 300 to 400 whales in San Ignacio Lagoon in the whole season. That is between the summer all the way up to April. And these are different whales, right? Now I'm saying 2 to 3 or 4 seasons ago, that number has gone a little bit lower, sadly, half of that. And more specific, the number of pairs of moms and calves. In the past, it was really common for us to see in the peak season of moms and calves, that is around the end of February and the beginning of March, we would see at least 100 pairs of moms and calf, at least. Now, and this is kind of worrying in that way, of course, we've seen 25. So it is a big difference in that. And yes, one of the theories about that, it has to do with climate change. And we're planning actually to go a little bit further into that on the next webinar, because it is really tied, it is really close to what's happening in their feeding grounds with their food sources. So, but yeah, it has to do with climate change.
Okay. And then where do the adolescents go? Those that are not sexually mature, are they making an annual migration?
These guys are asking such fantastic questions. I love it.
Yeah,
that's a great question. And some of the young whales are going to maybe hang out around Washington. They won't always make the migration. And this is another thing that we're seeing with climate change. As we have ice-free waters for longer up here in Alaska, we are worried that we don't have whales migrating as much as they used to. There has always been a group of whales that has sort of hung around the Washington area. And I think that group sort of changes in size throughout the years, depending on the adolescents and the not only adolescents, but sort of the non-mating whales. So maybe one of those females, you saw the years that Sofia showed where there's a mother and calf, and then there's a year they're a single, and then a mother and calf. Sometimes we will even have females that will stay up that far north because they know they're not going to make that year. They're not fit enough to do that. Great question.
Yeah.
Well, and that sort of leads me into another question I had, which was, do females continue to have calves into old age? When do they stop birthing?
Yeah, so so far, this is a fantastic question. They continue to have calves until they basically die, until they don't have such a thing as menopause as humans. Because if we think about it in general in the animal kingdom, why being there if you're not able to have to do the cycle of life, right? To give birth and give birth. So with the gray whales, what we know is that this really, and we assume old because years after years, you kind of see them, they are pretty big, they are quite large also, with calves. And so far, what we know is that until they are able to produce calves, try and do it. They're going to try to come, to mate, and do the whole thing. They're not going to stop.
There are only a few animals besides humans that actually go through menopause, and the orca is one of them, as well as a few other toothed whales. What's interesting about that is to kind of ask the question, why? Why would it be that the gray whales would continue on and the orca would not? And the latest research shows that it is because the older orcas need to take care of the younger females. So menopause actually becomes a function of society at that point, and a very good thing because the older females have the time and energy, the fitness to help contribute to what's going on with the younger females. So it's pretty interesting.
Yes.
Well, you brought up orcas, and I did have an orca question, so I'll go ahead and bring that in now. Why don't they go into the lagoon?
Yes. So the lagoons, as I mentioned a little bit before, they are quite shallow. And quite shallow, I mean really, really shallow. The deep part, that is just a small channel in the middle, San Ignacio Lagoon, for example, is going to be around 20 meters. So that is not that much, around 60 feet. What the researchers believe is that, first, you have a large aggregation of whales in a really specific place. So if a group of orcas, let's say the ones that we have here in Baja in the Pacific side, are going to be between 6 to 8 individuals together, it might sound like a lot, but when they go in to an enclosed area with, let's just say, 60 whales, they're not going to make it. With 60 angry adults, they're not going to make it. Just a fluke, movement like this could easily kill an orca. Orcas are really smart animals, so what they do is they just wait outside, especially at the end of the season when the moms and calves are ready to depart. That's when when they've seen some of the orca attacks alongside Baja in the Pacific coast. And also another thing is that they believe that orcas need a lot of depth to do their tactics of attacking a whale in general. When they do that, for example, in the Monterey Canyon that Annie was talking about, is a deep area. And they do need that. And here in the lagoons, they have the right oceanographic conditions for them to do that. So they are pretty smart animals and they just wait for them outside.
Excellent answer.
Okay. Yes. Oh, we've got so many. We've got a few more good questions. We want to get to those, and a lot more good questions we're not going to be able to get to. But let me ask you this next question. Do whales ever have twins?
Did I? Okay. Okay, so in general, the answer would be no. They don't tend to have twins or two calves. You've seen how hard it is for a single mom to raise a full-grown calf from their wintering grounds all the way back to their feeding grounds. It's a lot of energy for one whale to just feed one calf. Even though not many years, in 2015, in Ojo de Liebre Lagoon, the one that is more to the north of Baja, there was a record of one body with two heads. It was stranded, it was dead, but it was one of the first official records, and the researcher actually made write a paper about that. That it was the first official record of, possibly twins in whales. But yeah, it is just a lot for a mom to sustain herself, to sustain the whole calf, and they sometimes barely don't make it. So to add an extra calf, that is just a lot for them. So yeah, don't.
Yeah. Do you happen to know, has there ever been any research or estimate on how much milk a calf drinks?
That number would be more related to how much weight we see them gain. So that energy transfer. I have seen some efforts at numbers in terms of gallons, but I think that's going to be a pretty tough thing also to research. These whales are literally ejecting the milk into the calf's mouth where there's also water present. So yeah, I think the better research would be what's looking at the energy transfer from mom to calf. Would you agree with that, Sophia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see here. Have whales ever been tagged like sharks? And if not, why not?
Yes, and actually we're going to talk quite a bit about that in the next webinar, because we have gotten some tags onto gray whales, and it has given us great insight into their population numbers, their migration, where they go, all kinds of information. So yes, we do have some tags on some whales.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my last question for you. How long can they stay underwater?
About 20 minutes would be sort of the average. They don't do that all the time. They can go for a little bit of longer spells, but in general, they might only stay down for, a short period of time, 3 to 5 minutes, something like that. But they can stretch it out if they need to.
Mm-hmm. All right, this has been so much fun. Thank you. I can't wait for part 3. But now it's time for us to wrap it up, so I'm going to turn it back to the two of you for closing comments.
Well, we just want to say thanks. It's so fun when we have people who want to listen to learning about whales, and your questions are phenomenal. They're such good questions, so that's really exciting. And we can't wait for the next time either. We're going to be talking about Alaska, what they eat, how long they spend up here, and then some of the fitness issues that we were alluding to, where if there's not enough food, then they're going to be struggling. So it should be good. Thank you so much for joining us.
My thanks as well. And our topic tomorrow is going to be Madagascar. We hope you can join us for that. And then we'll kick off a full week next week with other great topics. So with that, we will say good day and conclude our daily dose of nature. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.